Security, we've got a homeless woman loitering in the lobby. She's harassing staff and pretending she can afford the VIP suite. That's what Emily Harris said. Loud, clear, no hesitation, as if she were reading it off a script. Her voice cut through the marble silence of the Pinnacle Lux Hotel's lobby like a blade. People turned, guests froze, and the woman she was talking about, standing quietly at the front desk in a black hoodie, jeans, and sneakers, didn't flinch. She just looked back at Emily, calm, focused. That woman was Lena Davis, CEO of Pinnacle Hospitality Group, the very company that owned this five-star hotel. But nobody behind that desk knew it yet. They thought she was nothing, a trespasser, a scammer, a problem to be handled. And what none of them realized, not Emily, not Mark the smug concierge next to her, not even David the manager watching from 10 feet away, was that in just one phone call, the woman they were trying to kick out would fire every last one of them. Before we get into it, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. If you believe everyone deserves dignity, no matter how they're dressed, hit subscribe. And if you're tired of people being judged by appearances, give this video a like. What's about to unfold in this hotel lobby? You won't forget. It was 4:51 in the afternoon when Lena Davis stepped through the glass doors of the Pinnacle Lux Hotel on West 54th Street in Manhattan. The early evening light spilled across the polished floor, catching on the gold trim and the crystal fixtures above. Lena walked in alone, dressed simply, black hoodie zipped halfway, baseball cap low, no makeup, no designer bag, not because she couldn't afford better, but because she needed to see the truth. For weeks, anonymous reviews and quiet complaints had pointed to something ugly happening inside this hotel. Certain guests, usually black, Latino, or dressed too casually, were being turned away, ignored, or even humiliated at check-in. Lena, born and raised in Harlem, had built her company from the ground up to stand for something better. She didn't believe in top-down inspections. She believed in seeing things with her own eyes. So she came here undercover. No warning, no booking under a flag name, just her and the front-line reality. She walked up to the front desk, where Emily Harris was typing something slowly into her computer. Next to her stood Mark Sullivan, who leaned on the counter with a smirk, like he'd already decided this interaction wasn't going to last long. Lena smiled politely and said, "Hi, I'd like to book a room for tonight. If there's a VIP suite available, I'll take it." Emily didn't smile back. She looked Lena up and down, then exchanged a look with Mark, who didn't even bother to hide his amusement. "You sure you're in the right place?" Emily asked, tilting her head like she was doing Lena a favor by asking. "This isn't a shelter." Lena kept her tone steady. "I'm in the right place. Here's my ID and card." She handed over a platinum credit card and a valid New York State ID. Mark squinted at the name on the card, but didn't touch it. Emily glanced down, then pushed both items back across the counter with two fingers like they were something dirty. "Yeah, no, this card's probably stolen. You don't have a reservation, and we're not checking you in. Try downtown." Lena looked her dead in the eye. "Please verify the card. I'm ready to pay in full." Emily rolled her eyes. "Ma'am, you're making the guests uncomfortable," Mark added. "We're going to have to ask you to leave before this becomes a scene." But it already was a scene. To guests who'd been standing a few feet away, Michael Lee, a software consultant from California, and Laura Bennett, a marketing executive from uptown Manhattan, had heard everything. Michael stepped forward and said firmly, "Excuse me." She presented valid ID and payment. "Why is she being turned away?" Laura nodded, folding her arms. "You're accusing her of fraud based on what?" "Her clothes." Emily snapped. "She's not a guest. She's trying to scam the system." Mark leaned in and said under his breath, but just loud enough, "Or, B, she just wants a place to nap for the night." That's when Emily picked up the phone, locked eyes with Lena, and said the line that would echo in the room long after she was gone. Security, we've got a homeless woman trying to pose as a guest. Lena stayed rooted to the spot, her voice calm but laced with warning. This is a mistake. You don't know who you're talking to, Emily scoffed. We know enough. You're not welcome here. Mark folded his arms. Time to move along. Michael raised his voice. This is insane. She has a valid card. Just check it. Laura shouted. You're discriminating against her in broad daylight. But by then, James Tucker, tall, thick-set, wearing a black suit with an earpiece, was already approaching from the back hallway, head of security, ready to do what the front desk asked without question. Ma'am, I need you to step aside, James said. Lena looked at him and said simply, I'm here to book a room. Ask them why they won't check me in, Emily cut in. Because she doesn't belong here. A few nearby guests were now watching closely. Someone took out a phone, but didn't record. Michael tried again. You're violating this woman's rights. But Emily was locked in, and Mark was already shaking his head like it was a done deal. Lena didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, she reached into her pocket and took out her phone. She looked at the screen for a moment, then tapped once. The call connected. She turned slightly away from the front desk as it rang. The name on the screen, Lauren Brooks, her executive assistant. Across the lobby, David Pierce, the hotel manager, finally stepped forward. He still didn't address Lena directly. He just looked at James and said, Let's keep things professional. Escort her out quietly. James nodded. Lena turned back toward the desk and said calmly, This is your last chance to do the right thing. Emily smirked. Save it. We know a scam when we see one. But what Emily didn't know, what none of them knew, was that they were seconds away from learning exactly who they were dealing with, and that one phone call, it was going to change everything. Lena hadn't even ended the call when the next blow landed. Mark Sullivan suddenly slapped his palm against the counter and pointed across the lobby toward a nearby luggage cart. Wait. Where's Mr. Chen's wallet? He shouted, loud enough for everyone in earshot to turn. Emily gasped theatrically, clutching her chest. It was right there on the desk, she cried. Mark snapped his fingers at James, who was still standing beside Lena. She stole it. I saw her reach over when we were checking the system. Lena's head turned slowly toward him, disbelief flickering across her face. You're accusing me of stealing now, she said, her voice sharp but restrained. I never touched anything but my own ID. James immediately stepped in, already reaching toward her shoulder. Ma'am, I need to search your belongings. The atmosphere in the lobby shifted from tense to dangerous. Laura's face went pale. This is ridiculous, she said, stepping forward. I've been watching the whole time. She never left this spot. Michael joined her. There's no missing wallet. This is a setup. From the far side of the desk, a soft but urgent voice added. They're lying. I've been here the whole time. She didn't steal anything. It was Sarah Nguyen, a young white intern who'd been silently observing everything from a side computer station. She stepped around the desk cautiously, clearly nervous. I was logging in reservations when Mark whispered to Emily to pull something drastic. Then suddenly, they start yelling about a wallet. Emily spun around, furious. Sarah, stay out of this. You don't know what you saw. But Sarah didn't back down. I saw enough to know she's being framed. James hesitated, just for a moment, but still turned to Lena and said, We need to follow protocol. Lena's jaw tightened. Your protocol is false accusations now. Her voice was calm but direct. Let me be clear. I've taken nothing. I've touched nothing. If you think a guest wallet is missing, you should check your cameras instead of jumping to search me. David Pierce reappeared behind the desk, arms crossed like he was watching a play unfold. You people are always making things more difficult than they need to be. He muttered under his breath, unaware that Sarah and Michael both heard it. Laura's voice cracked as she snapped back. You people, What exactly do you mean by that? Mr. Pierce. David didn't answer. Lena looked at each of them slowly, then pulled her phone away from her ear and ended the call without saying a word. She wasn't ready to reveal herself just yet, not until she saw how far they'd pushed this lie. Not until they buried themselves. Sarah took a cautious step closer to Lena. You're being set up. I've seen things here before, she whispered. They did something similar last month with a black couple from Atlanta. They said their payment didn't go through, but I saw the screen. It had. Michael nodded grimly. I've stayed at dozens of hotels around the world. I've never seen this kind of blatant disrespect in real time. Laura stepped to Lena's other side, now forming a quiet wall between her and security. She's not going anywhere. Mark's voice rose again. The wallet is missing. We can't just let this go. James, do your job. But Sarah, now emboldened, pointed toward the security desk. Then pull the camera footage. It'll show she never moved. James turned to David, who muttered, We don't need cameras to know what's happening here. Lena took a small step forward and looked David directly in the eye. Let me guess, you didn't review a single frame of footage before deciding I'm guilty. You just don't like what I look like standing in your lobby. David snapped. Don't twist this. You're causing a disturbance. We're trying to maintain order. Lena raised an eyebrow. By inventing a crime. Michael stepped up again. This is outrageous. I'm calling a lawyer. Laura added. I'll testify. This is defamation and harassment. James looked between them all, unsure now. Sarah spoke again, this time louder. Mark told Emily he'd get her out one way or another. I didn't understand what that meant at first, but now I do. Emily turned on her, furious. Sarah, stop talking. You're an intern. You don't know anything. I know what I saw. Sarah fired back, her hands shaking. Lena folded her arms and said quietly, but with authority, every word being said right now is being remembered, and it will have consequences. Emily scoffed. Yeah, and who exactly do you think you are? Lena didn't answer. Not yet. She glanced over her shoulder at the growing cluster of guests who were now whispering among themselves. People were watching. More than just Michael and Laura. More than just Sarah. There was a feeling in the air, like something was about to break open. But Lena wasn't surprised, because this wasn't the first time at to 8. She had walked into a boardroom with a detailed pitch, a rock-solid business plan, and a line of investor meetings set up in Midtown. She was told the numbers looked too aggressive, that her tone was off, that the hospitality market wasn't ready for her ideas. She sat across from men in polished suits who couldn't stop glancing at her skin, her braids, her smile, and when they said no, it wasn't the data, it was her presence. That scared them. So she built it herself, brick by brick, brand by brand. And now she was back where it all began, in Manhattan. And once again, someone was trying to tell her she didn't belong. But this time, she wasn't going to walk away. Laura looked over. You, okay? She asked gently. Lena gave her a slow nod. I've dealt with worse, but they've never had to answer for it, until now. Sarah stood behind her now, phone in hand. Should I start recording? Lena shook her head. Not yet. Let them keep talking. Mark turned to David and muttered. We're losing control of this, David said. Then get her out before more people see. But it was too late. Everyone saw, everyone heard, and Emily, now flustered, snapped, We'll call the police. For what? Lena asked, being black in your lobby. The words hit like a slap. And this time even James shifted uncomfortably. Michael said, You want to bring the police into this mess? Good, then we'll let them hear from everyone in this room, Laura added. Let them hear how you falsely accused her of theft without even checking the cameras. Sarah nodded. And that you made it up, because that wallet, it was never missing. I saw Mark slip it behind the counter. David's face went pale. Emily looked stunned. Mark blurted, That's a lie. But his voice cracked mid-sentence. Lena's expression didn't change. She simply said, "You've done more than enough, and now, it's my turn." The moment Mark was exposed for planting the wallet, the entire lobby held its breath, but David Pierce, arms crossed tighter than ever, wasn't backing down. Instead, he leaned toward the desk monitor, clicked rapidly, then looked at James and said coldly, "Escort her out. She's been flagged in the system as a known trespasser." The words hit the room like a hammer. Lena turned, stunned but composed. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice sharper now. "That's not only false, it's defamatory." David didn't even glance at her. "The system doesn't lie," Emily chimed in from the side. Smug again. "That's right. She's already been banned from this property for prior incidents. We're just following standard protocol." Lena stepped closer to the desk, calm but fierce. "Pull up the timestamp on that entry." Emily hesitated. "What for?" "Because I want to see exactly when you decided I was a trespasser." Laura shook her head in disbelief. "You people just keep digging deeper," Michael added. "Now you're falsifying internal records to get her out." But David waved them off. "Guess who interfere will be asked to leave as well." That's when Sarah, still watching from behind the desk, said quietly, "I saw it change just now. She wasn't flagged." Before Emily just added it while David distracted everyone. The accusation landed like a firecracker. A couple near the elevator turned their heads. A man in a gray suit stopped walking, phone in hand, pretending to scroll, but clearly eavesdropping. James furrowed his brow. "You're sure?" he asked Sarah. She nodded, stepping toward the desk. "I was sitting at the terminal on the left." The guest profile for Davis was clean. No alerts. Then Emily typed something in, and suddenly the words, "Do not serve trespass prior," appeared. I saw the screen. Lena's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes turned colder. "So now you're altering system data in real time to remove someone you don't like the look of?" Emily shrugged. "Feigning. In a sense. She must have been flagged earlier. Maybe another staff member. No one else touched that profile but you," Sarah interrupted, "and we both know it." Michael turned to the growing group of onlookers. "You see what's happening here? They tried to frame her for theft. That failed. So now they're inventing system bans to throw her out. That's not hospitality. That's a cover-up." David's voice boomed now, louder, more desperate. "Security, remove her. I don't care what anyone saw. She is not permitted." Here. James looked hesitant for the first time all day. "Sir, maybe we should pause. This is becoming public. Do your job," David snapped. But Lena stepped forward again. "Touch me without cause and you'll regret it. This is your final warning." James held up both hands, unsure which direction to move in. Laura pulled out her phone. "If no one else will document this, I will. Let's see what happens when the board sees how this hotel treats its guests." Sarah nodded, moving to stand beside her. "This isn't right, and it's not legal." Emily tried to laugh it off. "You interns get so emotional." "I'm not emotional," Sarah said, her voice steady now. I'm just tired of lying for people like you." Lena turned to David. "You've labeled me a criminal, publicly, in front of your staff, your guests, and your own system. And yet, I've done nothing but try to pay for a room." David, eyes narrowing, replied. "You refused to leave. You escalated." Mark added. "You raised your voice." Michael barked a laugh. "No, she didn't. She stayed calm while you made up stories," Laura added. "She's been humiliated, accused of fraud, theft, and now she's being digitally erased. This is disgusting." The tension climbed higher. James shifted uncomfortably. "We can't just remove someone on a fake ban. It's not fake," Emily insisted. "The system flagged her, because you flagged her," Sarah countered. "Right in front of me." Lena glanced once more at the desk computer. "Pull up the access log. Every change to a guest file has a timestamp and a user tag." "Let's see who modified it." David froze. That's restricted, not to someone who knows how your system works. Lena replied, unless you want to explain to your corporate IT team why you're denying an audit request. Emily paled. Sarah smiled faintly. She knows exactly how it works. Michael leaned in. How do you know that, miss? Lena gave the faintest smile. Let's just say I've read the training manual cover to cover. The desk went silent. Laura looked from Lena to Sarah to David and whispered, they're unraveling. They don't even know who she is yet. Mark, now visibly sweating, whispered to David, we've got a problem. David shot back, just stick to the story. She's a disruptor. But Sarah wasn't letting go. You can't keep lying. I'm sending screenshots of the system changes to HR right now. I already took them. David snapped, you'll lose your job. Then I'll lose it for the truth. Sarah answered, guess. In the lobby, nearly a dozen now, were opally watching. Phones were out. A couple people were filming. The hum of the lobby had stopped. All eyes were on the desk. Lena looked over her shoulder at the crowd. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even surprised. She'd seen this playbook before. She'd read the tactics, deny, distract, discredit. They'd already run through all three. And now, they were tampering with systems, cornered by their own arrogance. James stepped slightly to the side, no longer blocking Lena's path. I'm not comfortable with this, he said quietly to David. We don't have real cause. David whispered back. She's challenging our authority. We can't back down. But Lena had already started dialing. Her voice, this time, was calm, but final. I gave you multiple chances to fix this quietly. You refused. So now I'm making one call, and that call changes everything. She lifted the phone to her ear. On the screen, Lauren Brooks, direct line. Emily, crossed her arms. Go ahead. Call whoever you want. You're still banned. No. Sarah cut in. She's not. Lena looked directly at David and said, you just fabricated system records to illegally bar a guest from your own property. David's face was stone. It's your word against ours. Lena smiled for the first time that day. Not anymore. Now it's your word against the entire board. It happened fast. So fast. It felt choreographed. 1 second, the lobby was crackling with tension. And the next, the sharp crash of shattering glass cut through the air like a gunshot. Heads whipped around. Emily screamed, loud, theatrical, eyes wide. She pointed toward the hallway where a tall decorative vase, easily worth several $1,000s, now lay in pieces on the marble floor. She did it, Emily shouted, jabbing her finger at Lena. She threw that vase. I saw it. Mark jumped in right on cue. She stormed off when we wouldn't let her stay. That vase was right there by the wall. She knocked it down. James flinched, startled by the noise, but turned to Lena with sudden force. Ma'am, that's destruction of hotel property. You're under arrest. Lena didn't move, didn't flinch. She stood still, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the broken shards in the hallway she hadn't even walked near. You're accusing me of vandalism now, she said quietly. The words smooth as silk, but cut like glass. David stepped forward, suddenly emboldened, his face red with authority. You just damaged a historical piece. This is criminal mischief on private property. James, cuff her and hold her until police arrive. The tension snapped. She didn't do anything. Sarah shouted, shoving her way to the front of the crowd. Mark planted that vase there 5 minutes ago. I saw him move it. Emily spun toward her. You better watch what you're saying. No. Sarah snapped. You watch, because I've had enough. Laura rushed forward. She never left the desk. I've been watching every second. That vase wasn't even in her path. Michael pointed to the security cameras above. Pull the footage. Pull it right now. But David waved his hand dismissively. That area is being serviced. Cameras are down today. Sarah laughed bitterly. How convenient. A $300 a night hotel with broken cameras in the lobby. Emily doubled down, her voice louder, shriller. She's violent. She's aggressive. Look at how she's acting, screaming, threatening staff, but Lena hadn't raised her voice once. All I've done, she said, is ask you to check my ID, verify my payment, and now, defend myself from yet another lie. James looked visibly torn. His hands hovered near Lena. But he hadn't touched her. Sir, he said cautiously to David, if we don't have footage, and there's no witness placing her near the vase. She's been nothing but trouble since she walked in, David barked. And now she's destroyed property. That's all the evidence we need. Lena looked straight at him. No, it's all the setup you need. You planted a problem, hoping it would erase the truth. Guests began murmuring again. This time, louder. People weren't just curious anymore. They were angry. A man near the elevators called out, "This is racial profiling, plain and simple." A woman in heels shook her head. I came here for a business trip, and now I'm watching staff accuse a guest of crimes to cover their own lies. Sarah stepped between James and Lena. Don't touch her, not unless you want to end up on the news. James lowered his hands slightly. I don't want trouble, but I have to follow orders. Not if those orders are illegal, Laura cut in. You can't just cuff someone without evidence. Michael, furious now, walked straight up to David. You're spiraling, and it's all because she didn't look like what you expected. David ignored him, locking eyes with Lena instead. You came here to cause trouble. Admit it. No. Lena said simply, I came here to see the truth, and you've shown me more than I ever expected. That's when Sarah pulled out her phone. You want proof? I recorded Mark moving that vase. I thought it was strange, so I hit record. I've got the whole thing. Emily's face drained of color. You did what? Sarah looked her dead in the eye. You heard me. You and Mark staged this. I'm done covering for you. Mark's voice shook. That doesn't prove anything. She could have done it after. Then show me the footage of her doing it. Sarah said. Her phone held high. Wait, you can't, because she never left this spot. Guests were now gathering closer. One even clapped quietly. Let's see it, someone called out. David turned to James, voice tight. Take her to the back and hold her until the board gets here. No. Lena said firmly. We'll wait right here, where everyone can see exactly how this hotel handles its so-called justice. Laura stepped beside her. You're not touching her. Michael joined them. Then Sarah. A protective wall of guests formed around Lena. If you touch her, Michael said, you're going to have a full-blown lawsuit, and not just from her. David hesitated, then tried one last angle. Fine, but you'll be banned permanently from this hotel and every sister property. Lena smiled, just a small, slow curve of her lips. Is that so? David nodded. You'll never step foot in a Pinnacle Luxe. Again. She turned towards Sarah. Can you repeat that? Sarah nodded. He said she's banned from all properties permanently. Lena looked at James. And you're still okay carrying that out? James shifted uncomfortably. Honestly, I'm not sure what to believe anymore. David sneered. Believe the people who sign your paycheck. Lena didn't respond. She simply looked at her phone again and tapped a contact. The call connected instantly. Her voice didn't shake. Lauren, she said quietly, we're ready. Emily's confidence cracked first. Who is she calling? She whispered. Mark looked around nervously. Why are people filming again? David, frustrated, turned back to the desk. Get security from the back. Call the night manager. But just then, the elevator dinged open and out stepped a people none of them had expected, a tall, commanding black woman in a tailored blazer with a tablet in hand, and a white man in a charcoal suit with the crisp demeanor of someone used to making decisions. The woman was Lauren Brooks, Lena's executive assistant. The man beside her, Robert Kane, regional director of Pinnacle Hospitality. David's eyes went wide. Emily took a step back. Mark dropped his pen. Is this about her? David asked, trying to regain composure. Robert nodded slowly. Yes, it's exactly about her. Lauren turned to Lena, smiled warmly. and said, "You ready?" Lena stepped forward, standing tall in the center of the lobby she'd been humiliated in. "I've been ready since I walked in." But even then, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The setup had collapsed. The lies had unraveled, and the people who had judged her by her clothes, her skin, her quiet strength, they were about to learn that the woman they'd labeled a problem was the one who wrote their paychecks. And in just a few more minutes, they'd learned that every lie they told had cost them everything. The moment Robert Kane stepped into the center of the lobby, silence spread like wildfire. His tailored suit, polished shoes, and calm expression said one thing without a word: power had just arrived. But it was Lauren Brooks, standing beside him with that poised, no-nonsense look Lena knew so well, who broke the tension first. "Everyone, I'd like to formally introduce you to the woman you've just spent the past 10 minutes trying to humiliate." She turned to her left and gave a slight nod. "This is Lena Davis, CEO of Pinnacle Hospitality Group." The words dropped into the air like thunder, not shouted, just stated. But they hit harder than any scream ever could. Emily froze, her mouth half open. Mark let out an involuntary, "Wait, what?" David looked like the blood had drained from his face. James stepped back in slow motion, as if suddenly realizing the person he'd nearly cuffed owned the badge on his blazer. Lena didn't say a word for the first few seconds. She let the truth settle, let it breathe. Then she stepped forward and addressed them directly. "My name is Lena Davis. I own this hotel. I own every property under the Pinnacle brand, and what I've witnessed today, from the fabricated theft, to the planted vandalism, to the falsified system records, to being publicly called homeless, will not be forgotten, nor will it be forgiven." A murmur swept across the room. Michael Lee clapped once, slow and firm. Laura joined him, then a few others, until there was scattered applause rising in the background, not loud, not performative, but honest. Emily's hands trembled. "We didn't know," she stammered. "You weren't in the system." Lena raised an eyebrow. "Because you deleted my entry. You labeled me a trespasser. You fabricated my presence a threat." Mark blurted. "We were just following protocol," David told us. "Stop," Lena said, holding up a single hand. "Don't throw each other under the bus now. You had plenty of chances to do the right thing, long before I made that call." David finally spoke, his voice cracked and defensive. "Ms. Davis, if we had known that I was the CEO," she cut in, "would you have treated me like a human being if you'd seen a blazer and a briefcase instead of a hoodie and sneakers?" He didn't answer. He couldn't, because everyone in the lobby already knew the truth. Lauren stepped forward with a digital tablet in hand. "We've already compiled witness statements. The guest registry shows her ID was presented. Security footage." "Yes." The hidden hallway cameras captured Mark placing that vase. Sarah Nguyen submitted a time-stamped screenshot of the system tampering. Lena turned to Sarah. "You didn't have to speak up, but you did, and that matters. Thank you." Sarah nodded, eyes glassy. "I couldn't let them lie anymore." Robert stepped beside Lena. "I've already spoken with Susan Caldwell and Richard Ellison on the board. Terminations are being processed, effective immediately. David Pierce, Emily Harris, Mark Sullivan, and James Tucker are relieved of all duties. Your employment with Pinnacle Hospitality Group is over." Emily gasped audibly. "You can't do that." "I just did," Robert said plainly. David lunged forward. "I followed orders. I've been enforcing the standards set by upper management," Michael shouted from the crowd. "No, you were enforcing your prejudice," Laura added, "and abusing your power." Sarah spoke quietly, but her words were sharp. "And you tried to make me cover it up." Mark raised his voice in desperation. "You don't understand the pressure we're under. We're told to profile, to protect the brand image." Lena turned toward him with a calm that was more terrifying than rage. "You just admitted, on record, that you've been instructed to profile and discriminate based on appearance. Congratulations, You've just opened the door to a federal inquiry. Emily burst out. David made us do it. He said we needed to filter guests who didn't match the clientele. Laura spun toward her. You had no problem saying she was homeless a minute ago. Don't start playing victim now. James, who had remained silent since the identity reveal, quietly placed his badge on the front desk. I'm sorry, he said to Lena, barely audible. I didn't know, but I should have known better. Lena looked at him for a long moment. You had a choice. You chose silence, and silence, in moments like this, is complicity. Lauren turned the tablet toward Lena. Everything's being documented. The board will issue formal apologies to the guests present today. HR is coordinating with legal on non-disclosure violations and restitution, Robert added. All staff are being notified. We'll begin the retraining and internal audits first thing tomorrow. Lena gave a slow nod. Good, because this wasn't just a personnel issue. It's systemic, and it ends now. She stepped back to the center of the lobby, raising her voice for the first time, not yelling, just projecting so there was no confusion. Let me be clear. What happened here is bigger than just one front desk clerk or one broken vase. This was a coordinated act of exclusion and humiliation rooted in appearance, in race, and in arrogance. And I'm not just going to fix it here. I'm going to fix it across every property that bears my company's name. There was a long pause. Then Michael called out, That's leadership. Someone else whispered. She took everything they threw at her and never raised her voice. Sarah smiled faintly. She didn't have to yell. She just waited until the last word was hers. Lena turned to Lauren. Reach out to corporate. I want every general manager briefed. I want new compliance policies on my desk by end of week. And I want the guest who filed the original complaint that started this investigation found and personally contacted. We're going to make this right, publicly. Lauren nodded. Already started. Lena looked back at the staff who had tried to destroy her reputation. Emily was crying now, pleading softly. Please, I have a family. I didn't mean. You meant every word when you called me homeless. Lena said. Now you'll carry the consequences. Mark tried to speak, but Laura cut him off. You already said enough. Go pack. David didn't say a word. He simply turned and walked toward the office, his career crumbling behind him with every step. As the security team escorted the four disgraced staff members through the lobby and out the front door, Lena remained rooted in place, watching, not with vengeance in her eyes, but with resolve. Robert turned to her. Do you want to head to the boardroom? Lena shook her head. Not yet. I want to stand here, right where they tried to erase me. Lauren said quietly. You just wrote the new standard. For this industry. Lena nodded. Not just for me. For every guest who was ever looked at like they didn't belong. The applause returned, not loud, not staged, but real, earned. And for the first time that day, Lena smiled. Not because she'd won, but because the truth had. By 9, how the next morning, a different kind of silence filled the sleek glass boardroom on the 21st floor of Pinnacle Hospitality's Midtown headquarters. No phones rang. No assistants whispered. Every executive at the long oak table was seated, alert, and bracing for what was coming. At the head sat Lena Davis, dressed in a sharp navy suit this time. No hoodie, no cap, just presence. The walls around them gleamed with framed accolades and industry awards. But today, none of that mattered. Let's begin, she said, her voice steady but firm. Last night, for staff members were terminated from the Manhattan property for coordinated acts of discrimination, fraud, and misconduct. But this wasn't just about individuals, it's about culture, and if we don't fix what allowed it to happen in the first place, it'll happen again. To her left sat Susan Caldwell, Pinnacle's chief ethics officer, pen poised but jaw tight. To her right, Richard Ellison, chief operating officer, shifted in his chair and gave a grim nod. We've already sent apologies to every guest who witnessed the incident, Susan said. Legal is reviewing footage, statements, and internal documents. Lena looked directly at her. Good, because today, we're going beyond damage control. We're setting new policy. Lauren Brooks stood behind her, tablet in hand, quietly loading emails and audio clips. Robert Kane, now seated among the executives instead of behind them, added, "The HR audit uncovered something you need to see." He tapped his laptop and slid it to Lena, showing a confidential internal memo dated 3 years ago, signed off by two now-retired VPs. The subject line made her stomach tighten. Guest filtering guidance, brand image compliance. Lena read aloud, "Properties should discreetly prioritize guests who align with the expected Pinnacle Lux image. Staff are advised to defer check-in for guests appearing disruptive to brand tone. Internal note, attire, demeanor, and perceived affluence may be considered." She looked up. "So, we have it in writing." A quiet, unofficial green light to profile. Richard ran a hand down his face. This never made it past regional leadership. But it existed, Lena said, and it gave people like David Pierce cover to treat guests however they wanted. Susan nodded grimly. "This changes everything. It's not just bad behavior. It's an institutional failure." Lena's gaze hardened. "Then we clean it from the inside out." Lauren spoke up. "I've already started drafting revised training modules, bias awareness, ethical guest treatment, and zero tolerance for fabricated documentation." Robert added, "And I've notified every general manager. Every branch is paused on guest filtering procedures until further notice." Lena looked down at the memo one more time, then closed the laptop. "We're not pausing anything, we're ending it, effective immediately. All guidance that encourages selective service based on appearance or assumption is rescinded. Any manager found to have implemented or enforced this memo will be reviewed for disciplinary action." Susan jotted it down word for word. "Do you want this pushed to press?" she asked. Lena shook her head. "Not yet. First we fix it, then we tell the world how we fixed it." Michael Lee and Laura Bennett, invited guests to the meeting, sat quietly near the sidewall, dressed professionally and watching everything unfold. "I have to say," Michael said softly, "this is more accountability than I've seen in a long time." Laura nodded. "And it's being led by the person they tried to erase." Lena turned to them. "Thank you both for being here. You saw the worst of us, and you stayed to help rebuild the best." Then she turned back to the board. "This isn't just about hospitality. It's about human dignity, and I won't let anyone in this company confuse good service with selective exclusion." Sarah Nguyen, seated at the far end beside HR counsel, raised her hand gently. "I know I'm just an intern, but I've worked 3 rotations already. I've seen how some of the senior staff coach others to look the other way. This isn't just a memo. It's a mindset." Lena nodded. "Not anymore. You spoke up when it counted, and because of that, people will be treated better across all 40 properties." Richard leaned forward. "We'll need formal audits of every guest interaction flagged in the last 6 months." "Do it," Lena said. "And I want anonymized feedback from employees on whether they've been pressured to discriminate or stay silent. Give them immunity if needed." Susan raised an eyebrow. "Full immunity, if it gets us the truth," Lena replied. "Yes, because the truth is the only thing we can rebuild on." As the meeting closed, Lena stood and walked toward the glass wall, looking out over the skyline of the city where it had all started for her. Behind her, Susan signed the official internal memo titled, "Emergency Bias Reform Protocol," one line, in bold red text. Read, "No employee shall be punished for serving any guest with dignity." Lena smiled faintly. It was only the beginning, but it was a start. 3 months later, on a crisp September afternoon, Lena Davis stood once again inside a Pinnacle hospitality boardroom, this time not in confrontation, but in reflection. The room felt lighter now. Walls that once carried silence now echoed with reform. Since the Manhattan incident, Pinnacle Hospitality had rolled out sweeping changes across all 40 of its properties, new hiring practices emphasizing diversity, mandatory anti-bias training for all staff, and a new guest service creed, drafted personally by Lena, hung behind every front desk. Respect isn't optional, it's our baseline. Every general manager had been retrained, every frontline employee had undergone review, and every guest who had been mistreated, including the anonymous one who inspired Lena's undercover visit, had received a personal apology and lifetime Pinnacle access. But even now, 3 months removed from that humiliating day, the memory of Emily Harris calling her homeless in front of a room full of strangers still clung to her. And yet, in many ways, that moment gave birth to something greater, because what followed wasn't revenge, it was reform. We've redefined luxury, Lena said quietly, gazing out the glass window onto the Manhattan skyline, not as who we serve, but how we serve. Behind her, Susan Caldwell nodded. And we've set a new standard for the industry, Richard Ellison added. Guest satisfaction is up, staff retention is improving, and the media response to our internal transformation has been overwhelmingly positive. It wasn't just words, it was working, but not everyone was celebrating. 2 days earlier, Emily Harris had shown up uninvited at the very hotel she had once worked in. She stormed into the lobby, shouting that her life was ruined, that she'd only done what she was told. Security, now retrained and respectful, escorted her out quickly and calmly, but not before Lena, coincidentally walking through the lobby with a visiting civil rights group, caught her eye for a moment. Emily's expression shifted from anger to regret, but Lena said nothing. She didn't need to. The message had already been delivered, and the lesson already lived. Meanwhile, Michael Lee and Laura Bennett had taken their witness roles and turned them into purpose. Michael began consulting with hospitality groups across the country on inclusion training. Laura published a viral op-ed titled, "I watched a CEO be erased in her own lobby, then rebuild it from scratch." Sarah Nguyen, once an intern to Afraid to Speak Up, was now a full-time leadership fellow at Pinnacle. Her first project, designing onboarding for ethical guest interactions, based on everything she saw that day. Lena showed me what real leadership looks like, Sarah said in a staff interview. It doesn't raise its voice, it just doesn't back down. Inside the office, Lauren Brooks scrolled through a dashboard on her tablet. Complaints across all branches are down 39%, guest commendations up 62%. Lena smiled faintly. That's not just a stat, that's someone who walked in and felt seen. She paused and stayed, but before she could say more, Robert Kane entered, holding a printed report with a post-it marked, "Confidential." His face was serious. "We just received this from Legal Review. You're going to want to see it." Lena took the document and read quietly. Her expression hardened. So, it wasn't just David, it was orchestrated. Robert nodded grimly. A former executive assistant came forward. Multiple branches flagged black and brown guests under internal watch codes that were never formally acknowledged in our HR system. There's a history here, covered up by layers of red tape. Lena looked up. How many complaints were buried? At least 36, Robert said. All over the last 5 years, and we're just getting started. Susan walked in behind him, clearly having overheard. Do we go public with this? Lena didn't hesitate. Yes, no more silence. If we want to change the industry, it starts by telling the truth, even when it hurts. And so, later that week, Lena authored a guest column in a major national newspaper. The headline read, "I was kicked out of my own hotel. Here's what that taught me about power, perception, and the promise of change." The piece went viral, not for its anger, but for its honesty. She didn't name names. She didn't demand pity. She just laid bare the truth that no matter how much success you carry, how many titles or shares or letters after your name, you can still be reduced to nothing in someone else's eyes if they don't see your humanity. And that's why she fought back. not for herself, but for every traveler who had been turned away without reason, every mother made to feel small, every guest profiled, judged, or ignored. Leadership, she wrote, isn't about having the last word. It's about making sure the next person doesn't have to say it. Her inbox flooded with letters, hotel workers, former guests, business leaders, students, and quietly, CEOs from other industries who'd seen pieces of her story in their own reflections. They didn't just commend her, they followed her. On October 1st, Pinnacle Hospitality launched a national anti-bias initiative in partnership with multiple hospitality schools and travel associations. Lena spoke at its debut conference with her voice steady, her message clear. We fought for fairness, and we won, not with outrage, but with order, not with threats, but with truth. And as she stepped off stage that night, a retired hotel worker approached her and whispered, "I wish someone like you had come around years ago." Lena simply smiled and said, "I'm here now." And as she left the building, she walked tall, not just as a CEO, but as a woman who reclaimed the very space built to push her out and turned it into a blueprint for change.